Hello, everybody. Nice to be down in Charlotte. Although I was hoping the sun would be out coming up from New York, Connecticut. We haven't seen much of that this winter, so hopefully spring will be around for everybody soon. I'm going to take you through, as soon as we get my PowerPoint switch over here. Thanks, Adam. I'm going to take you through what we're doing from an innovation standpoint at GE, which is about half of my talk, and hopefully the other half of my talk is going to be a little bit kind of like marketer to marketer or innovator to innovator. So just maybe as a quick show, how many people here have grown up only in B2B marketing? How many would say, like, pretty much my career's been B2B? Okay, how many have grown up in B2C and are now doing some of B2B? So, okay, lesser number. All right, I'm kind of like part of that crowd. I actually still have to go around GE and call myself a recovering consumer marketer because I do pretty much B2B all the time right now. So I want to talk about what I see as the evolving role of marketing and how important it is for us all to be innovators. And I will certainly use a bunch of GE examples in here, but hopefully it will you'll find it somewhat informative for yourself as you go around. I do a fair amount of talks. I'm even teaching now up at Columbia Business School, and I always ask a little bit about my background. And like, your background has nothing to do with where you might end up. So this is like a little bit of my background. So if you're wondering, like, how do you end up being head of global innovation for GE? Well, one of my first assignments for Kraft was as a trainee. I got to drive the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile up and around the Midwest. It didn't last very long because I wasn't very good at it. Along the way at Frito-Lay, if you enjoy watching the Super Bowl, I actually started the Super Bowl halftime shows. I contracted Michael Jackson with the NFL when I was at Frito-Lay, and we sponsored the first one with Lay's potato chips. That's a little cool thing. Somewhere along the line, I got into financial services. Then I got into helping GE sell big iron, like CAT scan machines for hospitals and jet engines, and now I'm pretty much full-time on innovation, which is how do we reinvent ourselves. And I have to imagine whatever the business or the firm or the company you're in, you're thinking about how do you reinvent yourself. So the 30 seconds on us, okay, if you're in the B2B space, you probably have some idea of this, but man, we are like really big and really complicated. And this is, by the way, this is GE post-NBC. We don't own NBC anymore, and we're downsizing GE Capital. But you know, you take a look at there, we got this huge energy business. In fact, about a third of our energy business today is in the oil and gas business. So you don't think of us like Exxon and Mobil and Shell and people like that, but we are fundamentally involved in the whole, what I would call the upstream efforts on getting oil out of the ground. $20 billion healthcare division, $20 billion aviation division. Pretty much 8 out of 10 jet planes that fly around the world today have GE jet engines on them. So you think of Boeing and Airbus, well, they obviously have to have engines. Transportation, GE Capital, you know, our huge finance unit, and oh yes, by the way, we still sell light bulbs and refrigerators and things like that you have. That's obviously where it all started, although the light bulbs are quickly moving to LED and things like that. So we've been around a long time. We've had to reinvent ourselves a lot of times, and we're trying to reinvent ourselves now. And I would offer the analogy is just as companies don't reinvent themselves unless people reinvent themselves. So whether you're early in your career, you're maybe at some mid or inflection point in your career, or maybe you're trying to figure out, okay, what am I going to do when I grow up in my career? You got to be thinking of how you're going to change. What's this generational, and it feels like to me anyway, every generation, every company, and oh, by the way, every individual, you got to really think, what's going to make me unique? Now, where we start from and everything is around technology. I mean, it's hard to imagine, but we literally do have 45,000 engineers. So everything starts with, how do I build it? How do I physically make it better? What else can I do? And when you come from a legacy of this guy, Thomas Edison, it's easy to see where that came from. To this, certainly, you tell people now, he was the Steve Jobs of his era 130 years ago. We all studied him in history books, but this guy was a serial inventor just over and over and over again. And we like to try and think about that a little bit. We translate this to now what we call the GE equation. And if you look at his quote, which is, I find out what the world needs, then I proceed to invent it. We now say, we look at what the world needs, and then we're trying to change it. And how are we trying to change it? It's this belief in a better way, it's building things that matter, and then it's getting a world that works better. And if I could bug, is Adam around? Can you flip the commercial? Here, it's right there, thanks. Can you flip my commercial up for me? I want to show you how we manifest that right now. It's my one video in terms of the commercials you may have seen during the Olympics that kicks off. It's if you haven't seen it, it's called My Mom Works at GE. So let's see what that is.
My mom, she makes underwater fans that are powered by the moon.
It's a great audio. Hang on. It's a great audio. You like the soundtrack? Let's try that. All right, now I think you got it. Yep. Yep. Third try is the charm.
My mom.
Yay.
Mom, she makes underwater fans that are powered by the moon. My mom makes airplane engines that can talk. My mom makes hospitals you can hold in your hand. My mom can print amazing things right from her computer. My mom makes trains that are friends with trees. My mom works at GE.
All right, so when you have all that going on, and we get back here so I can pop back into our talk here. Well, did you like the commercials? Anybody seen it before? Yes? Okay, good. It's pretty cool when a B2B company can get 1.8 million hits on YouTube to watch a commercial. So I think we're tapping a vein there in terms of what we stand for. So I want to talk to you about innovation. Okay, how do we innovate? More importantly, how the heck do you innovate? And with us, we're trying to get this balance between technology-led innovation and market-led innovation. So I imagine a great many of you, you work for partners and you work for agencies that help folks like us figure out what's going to be out there in the marketplace. But boy, I got to tell you, man, it's hard when your genes go back to the laboratory and invention. And so what we're trying to move our world is from what we call invention to solutions, or from invention to innovation. And when we say that, we try and get people to understand it's not just about the product anymore. It's about the whole enterprise that it's put behind. And so the enterprise for us can be the power grid. The enterprise can be all the avionics now that run in not just an airplane, but maybe even an airline better, or a hospital better. But it also could be, let's think about, to me, this is, by the way, this is 6 years old, and it's the granddaddy of new business models. So what am I talking about here? I'm talking about the platform known as the App Store, or the Android, Google Play. I've got to update this 50, by the way. It just crossed 60 billion apps have been downloaded. So here's my cocktail fodder for you for next time you're at a party. So if someone asked you 6 years ago, what's your favorite app? What would your answer have been? Anybody? Come on. 6 years ago, fast forward all the way back to the old days of 2008. What's your favorite app? What would you have said? Because the App Store isn't even 6 years old yet, believe it or not. Okay, now if you take out your phone, the average person has over 100 apps on the phone. Okay, how did you ever make restaurant reservations before Open Table, right? How did you ever find your way around the block without either Google Maps or Waze or whatever? How did you ever think to listen to music when you had to put an old-fashioned CD into a CD player? Oh my God, right? Well, this is now a $50 billion enterprise that you could literally say got created digitally out of thin air. That's a fundamental new business model. That's what innovation is all about. That to me is, even though it's, everyone says, oh, that's B2C, certainly the GE guys say that, it's phenomenal in terms of how it's transformed things. And it's going to transform everything we do in the B2B world as well. So as marketers, what would I encourage you to think about? And this is something that actually I borrowed from my boss, Beth Comstock, who's our Chief Marketing Officer. Marketing's fundamental role at the end of the day is to do these two things, is to create value and is to create innovation. Because without that, why not are we only here? What's the role of any organization, right? If you don't innovate, if you don't add value, you're going to go out of business. So at the core, it's pretty simple, but it's pretty hard to do. So what are some ways to think about it? I'm going to give you a couple of things that we use that hopefully maybe give you some ideas. We've worked really, really hard to figure out what are the skills that you should use. So the distinction I would draw is we're all trying to solve problems. So if you've got clients, you're trying to help a client do what? Get more business, invent a new product, something like that. But do you have the skills to help them do that? Well, inherently you do, but do you think about them specifically in that case? So we've come up with this idea of simplification. We actually call it FastWorks. The idea of incubating lots of ideas and scaling or activating the few that really pan out. How do you get them fast? How do you pump them through? And I certainly don't have time to take you through them, but the idea is it's a process. It's a huge cultural change in our organization to get people to think differently about how they're going to get stuff to market, all the way from upstream, which is what's the idea for the product or the solution, out to the downstream. I was chatting with Eduardo over lunch. We have really gotten into trying to think more like a startup. And if you're interested, go read Jeff Immelt's letter to shareholders, our CEO, that just came out a week ago, and he talks a lot about simplification. These are two outside entrepreneurs who we spent a lot of time with. And if you're looking for some reading, I would read either one of these books, The Lean Startup by Eric Ries or The Startup Playbook by David Kidder. They're both great guys. I've got them on speed dial on my phone. I was working with both of them yesterday. They're really, really smart. Okay? We try and think about ourselves as like the world's biggest startup. So how the heck does a $150 billion company act like a startup? I mean, it sounds like an oxymoron. But the principles of focus and passion and empowered teams and all that stuff, which is what a startup lives and breathes and dies by, is something we got to get back, I think, into larger organizations. And I think it's a tough challenge, especially when you've grown up the way that you've grown up. And trust me, I work with a lot of people who grew up the way they grew up, and this is the way they manage. But this, to me, is fundamental in an age of disruption if you're gonna do it. So now, a couple of examples of what we do with it is we've introduced this concept called the industrial internet. I hope you've all heard of the Internet of Things. Now, when I say the Internet of Things to most people and they say, hey, GE's working on it, they say, oh, great. Does that mean my refrigerator is going to tweet me when I'm out of orange juice? And it might, but that's not what we're building it for. We're doing it for industry. Now, again, we'll touch it into the consumer, and we absolutely have things out there. In fact, we just put a community-developed air conditioner on Amazon today. You might see a press release about that. So we're still doing, of course we want to do that stuff. We want to touch consumers. But what about heavy industry? Okay, this is the scene, in a power plant. How do you help me run my machines better? How do you help me run my fleet of gas turbines better? How do you help me run my whole industry better? There are a few organizations that can do that, but you know what? Every company in the world, again, I don't care if you're a provider, if you're an agency partner, or you're a manufacturer like us, we need to be working together to bring these benefits to society. Now, the benefits we talk about now is we're trying to shift our whole organization to think about outcomes. Outcomes, solutions, innovation, they all kind of roll into each other. But if you think about outcomes, I think we in B2B are uniquely positioned to talk about really big things. In fact, our CEO likes to talk about, let me see, by the way, these are the numbers you can save in some of our B2B industries. So take aviation just to use one example. If you can save 1% of the jet fuel, 1% for the world's aviation industries over a 15-year period, it's worth $30 billion to the industry. So you want to get invited back to see anyone in an aviation company, say to them, would you be interested in saving maybe just 1% of your jet fuel? I call it the IQ test. They're like, where do I sign? But it's really hard to figure out how to do. Now, if you're as an industry, by the way, so the second fun fact is they spend in aviation $200 billion a year in jet fuel. Now, let's take something like, I don't know, Twitter, let's say. Twitter went public. They have, 250 million users out there. How much money does Twitter make? Zero. Now, someday I'm sure they'll make a lot of money. That's not the point. This is not an anti-Twitter or social media comment. But they have 250 million consumers. They make no money, so they're they're struggling in a business model, like how could I just make a penny or two per customer? So here's an industry that we have already figured out with the industry. We can save billions of dollars. And to me, a unique difference between B2B and B2C, how many customers are in B2B? Now, it might be a lot, but in the case of the airline business, how many global airlines are there? If you don't know the answer, which is okay, you wouldn't necessarily know, there's only 120. You could put them right in the first 10 rows of this auditorium, every CEO of every aviation business. So if you go to them and you say, billions in savings, only a few dozen of you can have a meaningful conversation. So B2B conversations, when you think about outcomes, I think can be extremely impactful for you and what you can help your customers and your clients do. So we're working really, really hard. I think this is an area where Motorola and GE overlap, working really, really hard to get our organizations to think about what are you doing to improve the lot of your customer. And these are some monetary examples. Certainly in healthcare, you could do things like around productivity. You can obviously talk about patient outcomes, et cetera, in there. So really, really meaningful things. So the other thing we try and do then is how do you simplify it to make it meaningful, okay? At least the consumer marketers I talk to, when you begin to explain the B2B to them, their eyes kind of glaze over. And if you have that with your friends or family members, like, oh my God, it's so complicated. So how can we as marketers simplify the communication on what we're doing? So when we talk about our Internet of Things, just to give you another example, we boil it down to 3 pillars. And those 3 pillars most people can get. It's really smart, high-tech machines we call brilliant machines. It's advanced analytics. They now have software connecting all those machines, predictive analytics, big data. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there. But it's the idea of software now connected to these machines to help empower people at work. In other words, to help people run their business better. If you're doing that with a new ad campaign and you're trying to drive more demand for your clients, well, that's a way of empowering people. And you do it in social media. My message to you is why not back it up into the strategy of the company and help them fundamentally be thinking about new ways to go to market. So this is something I can tell you my team was bullseye, spot on center as the strategy team helping these senior executives at the company figure out what this is. Did we work with technology? You bet. Did we work with manufacturing? You bet. But we were basically the integrators to pull it together, the marketing organization. Another area where I know you're all thinking about and I know you all work with, the other example I want to talk about is collaborating, okay? Crowdsourcing, open sourcing, things like that. We do it now naturally as marketers. I think we do it for, it could be ad ideas, promotional ideas, how we're going to go drive to more demand, whether it's LinkedIn, Twitter, et cetera, all great. The message I would give to you is, are you thinking about how you could either change the role your company is or the services you can provide to your partners by reimagining how you can go back into their core business? And I'll just show you, these are 2 crazy examples, but we did these open innovation challenges last year. I should say I did them with my team as basically experiments to say, could we rock the world of things like manufacturing and product development? So the one on the left is we took 40 data sets from the aviation industry, everything from weather to fuel load to airport congestion to up in the air congestion. 40 data sets, I don't even know what 3/4 of them meant, but our aviation guys all knew what they meant. We dumped them together. We went out and crowdsourced data scientists and mathematicians who are coming up with these incredibly cool algorithms that look like we can save the average airline $26 million per year per airline. I mean, real substantial savings by basically making more efficient flight routes. Again, not a typical marketing assignment, but all of a sudden, you got people thinking in a whole different way. We got responses from you can see there, we got 3,000 algorithms submitted from 64 countries, or 164 countries, and the winning algorithm was by a data scientist in someplace in eastern Russia. I can't even tell you the name of the city, who literally has 0 aviation experience. So when I got to present this to our CEO, he said, that's incredible. Like, how many years of aviation experience does the guy do who did that? And I said, like, none. He's like, say what? None? So how's that for some disruption in your business model? So my challenge to you, what are you doing to think about new examples? The other one, you can't tell what that is, but I'll tell you what it is. It's actually a bracket that helps hold jet engines onto jet planes. These happen to be 2 aviation examples. that I picked here. About a third of the weight of a jet engine is just what the industry calls dumb steel, because obviously it needs to stay on the airplane, or we don't have a good experience when we fly, right? But those things are solid, cast, like titanium, very, very, very heavy. So this was a quest where we went out and said, imagine if you could 3D print it. How many of you are 3D printing savvy in the audience? Anybody? Okay, I figured you would be. All right, well, here's a challenge for you. You can go buy a 3D printer for $1,200. I have 2 in the hallway outside my office that everybody can use on my team. 2. I got a MakerBot and I got a GameCube from 3D Systems. Go buy yourself one in your business. Trust me, it'll rock your world when you understand what it is. So we went out to another crowdsourcing challenge and said, what if you could print this thing in titanium? Which, by the way, you can't yet, but you will be able to soon. Could you make it just as strong, but a heck of a lot lighter? Why? Because we all know weight is money in the aviation industry. Well, you can see the stuff there. In 3 months, by the way, I spent $40,000 on the test. We got 697 validated ideas from around the globe, and this one idea can save us per airline $10 million per year. By the way, how much did I pay the winning entrant to get a $10 million idea? $5,000. There's a college student in Indonesia, and he's thrilled to the moon that he got $5,000 by staying up a couple of nights and working on some computer software. And so we got that. So the idea of crowdsourcing, this is just to give you some kind of like eye candy of, are you thinking in different ways to bring new techniques in? Because if you're not, trust me, your competitors are. My last example, another little startup you can go look. We literally just announced this last week. We went out and found a startup in Arizona. It's called Local Motors. And as the name implies, they make cars. They make off-road racing vehicles. They are a community of crowdsourced motor enthusiasts who design all the parts. You do the struts, you do the wheels, you do the steering, I do the fuel injection. And then the best engineers who rise up to be community managers for their component, they literally fly to their micro factory outside of Phoenix, and they build the cars. And they sell the cars to anyone who wants to buy the car. So the community buys the car, people want to buy the cars. We have signed a contract with this group, and we have announced a community we're calling First Build. And starting June 1st, in fact, I'm putting this up there. If you go to firstbuild.com, you can join this community, and we are going to reinvent how major appliances are made. So within GE, I've signed up the appliance division, and we're going to reimagine we're going to go to the community and say, let's create the refrigerator of the future. Let's go create the stove of the future. In fact, I helped them out with the idea. My grill just died outside last fall, so we're going to try and create a stove that can also double as a real outdoor grill inside in your kitchen. So that's actually the first challenge we're giving the community, because I don't want to go buy a new grill. So hopefully we can figure it out, and I'll get maybe I can get one of the test models. But you can come in and actually join this community and do it, okay? That's what innovation is, and that's how I would challenge you to think about innovation. So I want to transition back to hopefully some news you can use, and maybe we got a couple of minutes or so for a question or so. But the thought we try and get our teams to understand at GE is, how do you get comfortable with being uncomfortable? Do I know the things I'm working on will work? Absolutely not. But do I know I need to try them? Absolutely yes. And I think the sign of great leadership is when you can empower and support your team to say, go try. And I get asked a lot. Like I said, I do teaching these days now. And just if I could offer you some food for thought that I've picked up in terms of career advice, it always helps to me to understand where your strengths are and where you're coming from. So yes, I would say go, the old adage, go look in the mirror. What is it you're really good at? And if you're not really good at something, go deep in something. Go know what you're good at. And oh, by the way, when you're good at something, trust me, it doesn't stop. I'm learning about innovation every day. I got people at GE who think I am totally crazy for signing up this Local Motors company, and all I know is I got to go do it. Why? Because I'm an innovator, and it's my job to go innovate. So that's the strength I'm working for. The other is you got to know where you are. Anybody, anyone ever run into like, hey, thank you for being a change agent. Would you be quiet now and go back to work? Anyone ever run into that in their career? I have certainly known that. An old boss gave me the second adage here, which is culture eats strategy for lunch. So you might know that you really need to change things, either with your client or your company, but if you're not savvy enough to understand how that fits within the culture, you're not going to be successful. You're probably not going to be there very long. Third one is one I've borrowed from Google, but I have to say I've used it my whole career. This is something a boss gave me at least 20 years ago or so. The 70-20-10 rule. Do your day job really well and make that almost 3/4 of your time. Then from that, go to your boss and say, hey, I've got this idea to make what we are doing better, and spend like 20% of the time on that. And then when you nail the first two, you get the right to say, now, oh, by the way, I got this totally wacko crazy idea. Do you think the first time I walked into my boss, Beth Comstock, and said, I don't know a lot about aviation. I sure don't know anything about jet engine brackets, but I'd like to outsource the design of these things that our guys haven't been able to figure out for the last 2 years? Now, if you were the head of aviation, what do you think you would have told me? Get out of here. Fortunately, my boss said, well, after she threw me out twice, on the third time, she said, that's just crazy enough. Maybe let's go find some people who are willing to try it. And we try it, and it's the big success we are now. Having said that, the last thing I will leave you on my wall is a product I know for a fact you haven't eaten, because it was one of my biggest multi-million-dollar flops early in my career, known as bite-sized Doritos. I can't imagine anyone here has heard of it because it flopped. Roger Enrico, who's now retired for 10 years, but the chairman of PepsiCo, gave that to me when I left. The little plaque you can't read on there says, it's all yours, Steve, because it was a dud. So remember, not everything works. You get up and dust yourself off. So I would say, this is what's on my wall. So what do you guys have on your wall? What gives you the strength and the comfort to say, you know what, I can be comfortable being uncomfortable, pick yourself up and head on to the next step. So thanks for your attention. I hope I answered some of your needs. Anybody?
Yeah, I got one. Appreciate it. Quick question. You don't have to disclose this, but out of curiosity, the percentage of budget that you're getting allocated to do this innovation on a growth scale, what does that look like so we would understand kind of a budget?
Yeah. No, actually, it's a great question. I would actually go back to something like that. I mean, we actually work on the businesses like this and say, you know what? You're actually nuts if you put a massive percentage of your budget into the brand new, uncharted stuff, because you do have to take care of the core. But you're equally nuts if you don't respect the fact that you should be doing lots and lots of tests. They don't cost a lot of money when you start them up. So if I had to guess, you know, if you can take 10, 15% of your budget and use it for experimentation, that's a great starting point. It's not about the majority of your budget. It's about enough of your budget, because the whole trick in here is you do things quick. Quick, learn them, don't spend a lot of money. The ones that work, you scale up. The ones that don't work, you chuck them and you move on. I think somebody else in the middle there. Yep, yes, sir.
How are you bringing along your established staff thinking like this? Or are you hiring them, or are you having to bring some people along with you? Yes and yes. So I've made a pretty substantial investment over, I've been doing this, I've had the official title for 3 years, but I've been doing this like 5 or 6 years now at GE. Half of my team, by definition, I've hired from the outside. You just got to get some outside thinking in. So I've hired people from P&G, American Express, oh, by the way, engineering companies. So, you know, to bring people in. And the consumer marketers, they don't speak the language, but they speak my language, and they would speak your language. And then the engineers can speak to the engineers. So, yes, about half of it you have to inoculate the organization. The reason I was pulling this back here is, though, for this one, if you do it only as outsiders, my learning now is you will fail. You've got to find some people. And one of the things Eric Ries, one of the entrepreneurs I showed you, he's got a great phrase which is called entrepreneurs are everywhere. Trust me, in your company, you got people who are dying to change, dying to be given the chance to go show something. You go grab them, and you say, I will work with you. You know the team, you know the business, and you find some of the, the more junior managers, and then you know what? You're also going to find some of the senior managers who said, damn, I've been trying to do that for years, but I never found anyone who had the guts to go try it. And so you got to do the top down, and you got to do the bottom up. And then I bring people in, and then I try and sprinkle in some outsiders, and that seems to be a pretty darn good combination.